to this interview on the topic of management and organization. It's hosted by Nicolien Arends and myself, Gijs Vermeulen. Today we have a special guest, Perijn Hoefsloot, Director Customer Experience and Marketing at Beter Bed. Also with us today are Madelief Dingemans and Wafa Shah, both students at European Studies. Welcome everyone.
Thank you.
So, Perijn, maybe it's best if you can shortly introduce yourself a bit more and describe your career. I'm not sure, but if it's possible, if you could include maybe some of the difference you have experienced in culture over the various organizations you worked in.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah. Sorry?
But quite a big question to start.
No, it's a good question to start out with. So my name is Perijn Hoefsloot. Indeed, I'm Director of Customer Experience and Marketing here at Beter Bed. Beter Bed, a sleeping retailer, so we sell beds, mattresses, etc. I started here roughly 4.5 years ago as a director of e-commerce. So first I had a focus on building the online business, and about 2 years ago my role broadened a bit. So I'm now also in charge of marketing, online, offline, and customer service. So web development and e-commerce, customer service, and marketing are my responsibilities currently. I started out studying at European Studies, so I was one of you guys, let's say, attending the Haagse Hogeschool in The Hague, of which I have very fond memories, not only of Nicolien in class, but also everything around it. So I finished my bachelor there in 2005, continued studying a master's at the University of Amsterdam in marketing and business studies. And during my studies, I actually already started working at T-Mobile. So I've been there for 4 years in various roles, actually next to the studying. So I combined it. I always had a few days where I didn't have to go to class, or I managed around a bit. At T-Mobile, I set up the online store at the time, which we didn't have back then yet. Then I got an opportunity at Heineken. So first an internship for half a year, and then I rolled into a junior brand manager role there, really at the, let's say, Dutch Heineken branch, responsible for the Heineken brand in the Netherlands. And there, that was a really fun role, really particularly focusing on marketing and branding, fast-moving consumer goods. Lots of projects, sponsorships of Champions League, James Bond, but also some retail promotions and television commercials. Then I got back in touch, let's say, with my former boss from T-Mobile. He was working at UPC, so that's the current Vodafone Ziggo in the Netherlands, big telco, part of Liberty Global Group. And I worked there for 1.5 years as an online campaign manager, where I got some, let's say, hands-on experience with running online marketing and different online marketing disciplines. And after 1.5 years, our vice president sales moved to Switzerland, where she became a vice president sales. And she asked me to come along and build up an online sales and marketing team. So we moved to Switzerland, lived there for 5 years in Zurich, which was a lot of fun. I could use my languages again, speaking German and English mostly on a day-to-day basis, and also managing a team there. So I built up a team. When I arrived, there was only one person in my team, and when I left, we had a team of roughly 10 within my domain. Then in the meantime, I got married with a Dutch half Belgian wife. She also studied at Hebo, so we met during our European Studies time in The Hague. We have 2 sons, Peter and Joris, of 6 and 4.5. And when the second one arrived, let's say, it was time for us to move back to the Netherlands. which is the time when Beter Bet came along for this role, which was a huge opportunity because it meant managing or directing at let's say a management team level, and also together with my colleagues overseeing the full Benelux business. So I think that covers it all. And you asked about the cultural differences. So I think there are three main cultural differences, if you ask me, which I've experienced at least. So at Heineken, it was very, large international organization, lots of different cultures. So there was a lot of fun because you get a lot of diversity. Specifically in Switzerland, I think we had quite of a, it's a culture clash that you get into if you move into a different country. And of course, we have already experienced moving countries because I also spent half a year doing an Erasmus in Barcelona, and my wife did one in Madrid as well. But I think the cultural differences are really interesting to see. For example, the Swiss are a bit more, let's say, reserved, so to say, and also on a day-to-day in a management on a management basis. I think the meetings that we had there were just super funny, because it was always that sometimes a meeting came to a conclusion. And then afterwards, there were side meetings going on, and they came back to a conclusion that we thought we had already taken. So it felt as an Poolse landdag in Dutch sometimes, where you have to get everybody really on board in order to get a decision taken. But in the end, I think. I think the cultural differences really have helped me to, I think, become a more broad-minded person in knowing how to deal with different cultures. Speaking their language, I think, is a huge plus as well. Really. If you are able to speak German or understand at least Swiss German, being a Dutch guy in Switzerland, it opens up doors, and I think that has really helped me also throughout my career, being able to speak in the language that I've been dealing business with.
Thank you for this very elaborate introduction. I heard some very interesting things. You mentioned how you actually used your languages learned at the European Studies program, and how they actually helped you to become successful in different environments. But you also mentioned that Heineken was had a very diverse workforce, and this actually brings us to a very relevant topic right now. There's a lot of things in the news about the European Commission, that they have a long-term commitment for diverse workplaces. So I do not know the level of diversity in your management team at Beter Bet, but could you maybe express your opinion on diversity in management, and maybe also about the pace of changing of diversity in management, as we see that the news is often full of, let's say, issues with diversity?
Okay, so how we're set up at Beter Bet is we're publicly listed. So we have the holding, let's say, Beter Bet, and then we have a number of, let's say, regional branches, which is currently the Benelux. So for which I'm responsible for, the responsibilities I named in the Benelux region. So we have roughly 100 stores in the Netherlands, and 17 stores in Belgium. And we also have a branch in Sweden where we have the Sengjette retailer, also selling beds, mattresses, box springs, etc. And there they also have their, let's say, own management team. So currently within our management team, we are 5 guys, but we do have an HR manager that sits in with our management team meetings. I think inclusion and diversity is super important, and if it was up to me, there would be more diversity in our management team. And I think in general, the pace at which this is happening is, let me just comment on what I see around me, not necessarily beta bet. I think could be faster, right? I think a more diverse and inclusive management team leads to innovative thinking, a broader range of ideas, better discussions in general, because you have all these different viewpoints and angles that you can mix into a discussion. So again, and you know, it can be up to me, at least in my own team, which is something I specifically also take into account when hiring. I think it's always important to have a good mix of people with various backgrounds and various views on how they manage or how they do their job.
Thank you. So I've asked a lot of questions till now, but maybe we also have 2 students present, and I'm actually quite curious what they have to ask you.
Very good. Yeah, please feel free to chip in if you have a question, ladies.
I was wondering, in what way do you use global management skills in your current job?
So I'm not sure if it can be global if it's only on a European level, but in my current role, I'm responsible for online and web development, also let's say holding wide. That means that we also build our website for example, our Swedish colleagues and branch. So to that extent, you know, we have a bi-weekly session with them in which we take a look at, okay, how's business going? Can we support in any way? But overall, of course, we also have suppliers or you know, digital marketing agencies or other agencies that help us or support us in our business. And to that extent, you know, the speaking the language, being fluent in English, or you know, having this broader view, I think always helps. And also, I think, you know, the time is past that you can just focus on your own topic, let's say retail and betting, and only look at competitors in betting. I think if you look at it from a customer point of view, the pace at which everything is changing from a digital perspective specifically is so fast that you know, you cannot, customers, let's say, are expecting the same service or the same features from Netflix that they see at Netflix or they experience at Spotify, and they also expect them from a company such as Beta Bet. So in that sense, we're always trying to keep a broad mind in looking what's out there in the market and in the world. But when it specifically comes to managing, there's limitations to my role currently. Apart from the Belgian differences, cultural differences in managing the store employee and staff there.
Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming that your foreign language was German. At what level were you when you finished European studies?
Ooh, uh, I think it was well enough for me to have a good conversation, and I have to say that when I arrived in Switzerland, also because I was from day one had this management position, I started out managing in English. And the reason why is because sometimes you get into a tough conversation or a tough discussion with some of the people around you. And then it helps to at least have English, let's say, as a backup, to which I felt stronger and more, let's say, yeah, I felt more at ease speaking in English than in German in the beginning. So I started managing because you can sometimes better express yourself in another language, which I think is something we all are familiar with here, at least in this group. But you as you're living there, you're building up your skills and your language, your vocabulary. So over time, I've even managed meetings in Swiss German, which is very different also from High German. So I think again my level was quite okay. I don't know what the rating is, but I felt at the time I felt comfortable of doing a negotiation or something like this.
Okay, thank you.
Spanish was my other language, by the way, because I spent some time in Barcelona as well. Hablo español también.
I also have a question.
Yeah.
What are the required skills for a position at your firm?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. So we at Beta Bet we manage and also were asked to have how do you say this? So we're result driven, right? So we manage on results. And so there's some hard and soft skills that are required to bring in those results, let's say. So, for example, some competences such as decisiveness, being able to take the right decision. I think leadership style, such as coaching, sometimes being very directive, sometimes being supporting, or being able to delegate. So I think it's what's called situational leadership is something that's really not a necessity or requirement per se, but comes with benefits. But also entrepreneurship, having a clear vision. And again, driving the results are required in a role such as the one that I have, but also some basic technical or in my case, a marketing background, the background in the field that you're required to have the job at are necessary for a role that I'm in. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Okay, can I, because you mentioned leadership and the most important characteristics in your organization, but sometimes, there is a difference between leading an organization and managing an organization. Well, we've seen, for example, companies like what happened currently with Pels Rijken in Dutch. There was this leader, top manager, who led the company in the wrong direction because he made fraudulent actions like fake how do you call them, invoices, etc. So can you reflect on a statement like, for example, leadership or leaders in an organization can frustrate the goal set and can misguide the stakeholders of an organization with fraudulent behavior?
Yeah, so let me please be clear that I can't state anything on the company that you've just mentioned, but just in general, I think it's very important that as a management team or as a leader, you set, let's say, SMART goals, so specific, measurable, attainable, and timely. It's necessary to also be transparent in the goals that you set. I think fraudulent behavior, I think, arrives when pressure is so high, or people tend to go for their own goal rather than the common goal of a company or a team. So just to give an example, there's a number of KPIs that you set, so key performance indicators, to be able to measure an outcome or to keep track of how you're doing on certain stuff. So, for example, in our branch, we measure the retail marketing mix. So there's revenue, and then that comes out of the visitors that are coming into the stores. Then you have the amount of visitors that are actually buying. So this is called conversion. And then there's the average ticket size, so the average amount of stuff that they buy. And so these three KPIs, they're all equate to the revenue. Now, if you set specific goals on any of these KPIs, for example, traffic, but also on conversion, and you set, let's say, personal goals like bonus on these type of KPIs, you may get the wrong behavior from certain people. So, for example, something that could happen is on the conversion side. If one customer comes into your store, or let's say conversion works like this: 100 people come into the store, 10 people go out buying a product, so the conversion rate is 10%. However, if somebody comes in, buys something, like buys two products, and instead of putting those products on one ticket, they get two different tickets, it looks as if two people came in and bought two different products. So you can play with those numbers if you're smart, if you're not looking at the company goal, but taking into account your own personal goal. And so people always try to beat the system when it comes down to personal goals, bonuses, if money is involved, unfortunately. And I think that's part of managing, risk assessing, and setting the right goals at the right level.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment on that.
Yeah.
Is there any question, Madelief, for example? Do you have a question on this topic?
Well, I was wondering how many people you supervise/manage at BeterBed.
Okay, so there's roughly 1,000 people in working at BeterBed in the Netherlands. We have quite large logistic operations, and of course our staff in store. And in my team, I think there's roughly 70 people, and I have 5 people, direct reports, so-called. So people that are directly reporting into me, and they have their teams again. So 5 managers and then 70 in total, 70. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So would you call it a flat organization or a tall organization?
So I think tall is considered when you have lots of different layers, and I wouldn't say we have a lot of layers. Actually, I think we're pretty flat in terms also of being open to each other. My door is always open. The 5 or the 4, me and my 4 colleagues, let's say, are all in the same room. So there's lots of open communication. I'm in touch with, let's say, customer service agents also sometimes on a daily basis, and I have lots of side communication or direct communication into the teams as well. So I think we, although we are set up, let's say, in a more traditional way, we're more and more working a bit like some kind of a matrix organization in which you have different roles and specialities, but on the other hand also have tasks from a team perspective. So working multidisciplinary in tasks and jobs at hand.
Okay, thank you. Mother Leaf, do you still have another question? Because I interrupted a little bit.
Well, I think it was interesting to hear about the flat and the flat structure, because I read about it in the book. So that's a nice repetition. But what would you do, for example, if is it your responsibility to let someone know when they're not working by the rules or they're making mistakes? Is that your responsibility to do something about?
Definitely, yeah. So if somebody somewhere in my in any of the, let's say, 3 departments that I have shows any misconduct, let's say, yes, they're going to hear about it, and of course I'm finally responsible for anything that happens within those departments. So let's just get the hypothetical example here that somebody misbehaves to a customer at customer service. Then I'm not going to go there directly myself, but I expect that that's being taken up with the person who misbehaved, let's say, but that cascades down, let's say, so down or up. So I will talk to my managers about it. Something happens and hold them responsible for the people that are in their teams, their respective teams again. So if I find out or hear about something, I first go and ask. I think listening well, by the way, is also one of those capabilities you need to bring to the table when becoming a manager. I think listening is sometimes highly overrated. Managing always feels like talking a lot, but asking the right question and listening is just as important. But that's how it cascades down. Yeah.
And do you find it difficult to have to tell someone that you're not happy about their work?
No, that's a good question, but I don't find it difficult. And the reason why I don't is because I think I am also trying to be very open and honest about everything that we do, but I also expect people to give me feedback on some of the things where I maybe make a mistake, or proactively also ask them how I can do things better, or if they don't agree, that they should come forward and say that they don't agree. So I try to be, let's say, get this open, a two-way communication going on. And because it's easy for people in my team, at least, to say and tell what they think, I think they also don't have I don't have a hard time when I have to tell people or challenge them on certain topics. And maybe sometimes I'm wrong as well, so there have been times when I'm very mad, or I can be quite mad at something or something that happened, and then start asking questions, and then I think maybe it wasn't that bad, and get some feedback about it as well. So if you're open to the discussion, I think that's the most important thing. But it's a good question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And Wafa, do you have a question for Perrin?
Yeah, I was wondering what some of the key values are that you've learned so far as a manager.
Key values. So I think the most important thing is appreciate the people you're working with and that you have around you. So we're working as a team, and so I always like to give people a lot of responsibility in my team, which is also something that I expect. So I would rather like to have stuff delegated and for them to also flourish and take that responsibility. Not everybody can handle it, and then you have a different conversation. But also letting people shine and give them credit for it. You sometimes hear managers giving credit or getting credit for some of their people's work. I think should always be open and honest about it. I think I think hiring people that are smarter on specific topics than yourself is also a value that I take into consideration. Because if you're surrounded by people that are smarter than yourself, you're becoming better yourself as well, and it becomes kind of it spreads in the team as well. And overall, I think treat the people how you want to be treated yourself, I think, is one of the core and key values that I always like to take into account. And I think as soon as I started managing myself, is when you first get to this notion of, hey, I'm asking this, I'm getting this as in return, let's say, or maybe someone is giving a report or presentation to me, and you think, hey, but I still need this or that, and then you think, but maybe I didn't do that to my own manager either. So it gives a better notion of managing upward to your own manager and managing downward to your team as well.
Perrin, thank you for this valuable insight on how you lead your team and how you act as a manager. And I maybe have one last question before we close down, because we're eating a lot of your valuable time. But currently we are in some kind of pandemic, and you had to close all your 100 stores for a certain moment in time. And I don't think any contingency planning could have been a better bet to prepare for this. And hopefully, this pandemic will stop, and as a world, we don't have to face this for a long time. But you have had the experience on managing this from your perspective. So maybe you have a tip for our students who are the future managers and leaders on. So what is your best practice you might want to share with them on how to handle such a situation?
There's indeed, you're absolutely right, Gijs. There's no contingency plan that could have come up with the COVID scenario, let's say. So I think the most important thing is to be able to be flexible and agile, and also set up your team and your organization in such a way that you can be quick on your feet and respond quickly to different situations that are driving change for that matter. So I think again here how we responded is we got together with a lot of different people throughout the company, all disciplines combined in one room, let's say. sometimes virtually. But to really go through our processes and think creatively, think about what we could do. And I think that's change management that is happening usually over a longer period of time. And that was now fueled and packed into, you know, a very short amount of time in which we had to respond and react. So if you ask me, again, I think the question we started out with about inclusiveness, diversity, and being able to get all these different viewpoints on the table, I think that's probably the best way to go about. But keep a core team very small also, and very close. So quick and open communication lines. So you can also respond very quickly and bounce ideas off of each other. Yeah.
Maybe because you mentioned agile, and I don't know whether the students know what agile working means. So I don't know. So I'm looking at the students. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that part, because do you know what it is, agile working, Madeleine or Wafa?
No, I don't.
Okay, so yeah, no, of course I can. I mean, agile actually means agility. So again, being able to change and respond very quickly to your surroundings. Sometimes in agile working, agile development, what is meant is that you have an idea and you start building already from day one, where you're already taking into account the objective is what your user wants it to be. So you're developing for a customer's need, and I think one of the best examples is there's two ways to go about. You can think about building a car and then take 5 years of building that car and thinking it all out and starting from day one to build that car, and then after 5 years you have built a car, but the question is why did you build the car? And the car was being made to get you from point A to point B in a faster way. And so if you look at the agile way of working, maybe on day one you start with a skateboard that is already bringing you value after that first week, maybe, where you've developed a skateboard of getting you faster from point A to B. Then maybe that skateboard evolves in the second phase to, hey, maybe it becomes a bicycle, and then maybe that bicycle becomes a motorcycle. It gets you fast from point A to B, and certainly faster, which was the goal to start out with, but the goal was never to have that car. And so that's agile and agile development. But again, agile can have a bit of a broader meaning here. So to literally be quick on your feet and test and learn. I think that's important. Does it? Yeah, I don't know if that's a good explanation or not. Maybe not completely textbook, but.
But I think, you know, and I hope you agree with what I'm going to say, but an organization is never textbook.
Exactly. Yeah.
However, the textbook is useful to help you out of certain situations, but a practice is always different than theory. But it will. I hope that, you know, the practice and the education will help you in certain environments and knows you how to start and get along. So I think that your explanation of agile is actually maybe much better than the textbook.
Okay, well, thanks.
I think we have come to an end of the interview. Perijn, thank you for joining us. I think we learned a lot. Also, special thanks to Madeleine and Wafa.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. Yeah.
So.